All right, so I handed out a little reading from Professor Metz in his book, Poverty of Spirit, published in 1968. I like the little quote, so thought it would be an interesting place for discussion. So let me read the quote for us, and then we can talk about it. It is no accident that poverty of spirit is the first of the Beatitudes. What is the sorrow of those who mourn, the suffering of the persecuted, the self-forgetfulness of the merciful, or the humility of the peacemakers? What are these, if not variations of spiritual poverty? This spirit is also the mother of the threefold mystery of faith, hope, and charity. It is the doorway through which we must pass to become authentic human beings. Only through poverty of spirit do we draw near to God. Only through it does God draw near to us. Poverty of spirit is the meeting point of heaven and earth, the mysterious place where God and humanity encounter each other, the point where infinite mystery meets concrete existence. So I thought there might be enough in here to take us through a little discussion. So first, maybe we can kind of go through it in order. So first, his observation at the first of the Beatitudes is blessed are the poor in spirit, poverty of spirit. And I like what he's saying is, you know, if you reflect on each of the ones that follow, aren't they somehow a variation of that first one? I think that's a good idea. That holds some promise to think in those terms. Your thoughts? So he's thinking, blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. And his observation is, it takes being poor in spirit to mourn over things. Right? I like his take on, blessed are the merciful, for they will obtain mercy. He says, that has to do with self-forgetfulness. How does mercy have to do with self-forgetfulness?
Letting things go. Not holding grudges.
Yeah, because what I have to let go is
My self-importance.
my self-importance, sometimes what I'm due. I am really owed something. But to be merciful is to not demand payment, right? It's like, blessed are the merciful. Am I only merciful when I ought to be, when it's like, well, if it's what I ought to be doing, if it's how I ought to be, well then it's no virtue to be merciful, right? It's only a virtue to be merciful if I have a legitimate reason to say they don't deserve mercy, right? But they're not owed mercy. Now, if I show mercy when I'm not like having to do that, now it becomes a virtue, right? It was let someone into the group. It was not Descartes. What's the Derrida? Jacques Derrida, who says the only thing worth forgiving is the unforgivable. What's his point? If it's forgivable, then you have to forgive it. To not forgive the forgivable is to withhold what is due. But the only thing worthy of true forgiveness is to forgive the unforgivable. Now you're doing something. It's the same vein of thought, right? Thinking, you're following it sounds like a play on words, but if you think about it, it's like, oh, he's got a good point. Like, if Jane does something to me and it's forgivable and I don't forgive her, well, I'm the one who's not doing what I just ought to do, right? But if Jane does something and I think, well, that's not forgivable, now comes the test of whether I'm really forgiving. If I only forgive the forgivable, I'm just doing my job. I'm doing what I should do. But when you forgive the unforgivable, now you become a forgiving person. That's Derrida's point. And he makes the same point about gift. French philosopher, he's got these little themes, maybe a bit like Matt's here, where his theme is poverty of spirit, decides to write a whole book about it. But when Derrida was talking about gift and forgiveness, he's talking about the same thing. You know, it's only worth forgiving if it's unforgivable. That seems to be a little bit what Matt was tapping into, right? The merciful is the person who's self-forgetful. They just forget about the fact that, you know what? They shouldn't have done that. They did me wrong. You just let it, can you let it go, right? And so he's saying, take some poverty of spirit to do that, to let go, when by all rights you shouldn't have to, right?
Is Jesus specifically pointing to the Pharisees? Blessed are the poor of spirit, because the Pharisees and the keepers of the law thought they were high and mighty and the most spiritual.
Yeah, I mean, obviously what he says has direct correlation to their self-righteousness and their self-importance. But at the same time, what I think is awesome about the Beatitudes is he's speaking to commoners who think of themselves as nobodies. And after he says these things in the Beatitudes, he's going to say, and you are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. It's not you can be, or maybe you will be, if you get everything right. It's you are right now. And those people are thinking, who, us? We're the glue holding everything together. We're the salt of the earth, somehow preserving it. We're the light of the world. We're just common, workers, laborers, shepherds, farmers. And the scribes and Pharisees are the important people. And of course, toward the end of that, he says, unless your righteousness surpasses that of the scribes and Pharisees, you got a problem. So it's twofold. It definitely, like you're saying, it definitely addresses the religious leaders and their attitude, but it also is empowering in terms of its vision for common people, saying, where is the blessedness of God? It's where you might be surprised. It shows up in these places, in people who are poor. And of course, Luke doesn't include, in his version in Luke 6, he doesn't have in spirit. He just says, blessed are the poor, and woe to those who are rich. Okay? So it shows up in poverty, right? So yeah, it's twofold. God is not where you might think God is, and he's not necessarily with the people who claim to have the most intimacy and the best relationship. They may not be the ones where God is actually doing his work of blessing.
I keep coming back, my mental image of this is like a Venn diagram.
Uh-huh.
So, you got the stuff that's kind of core to all of them, and the others are just aspects of that same core around it, with overlapping.
So what is poverty of spirit? Not suggesting that we can actually come up with a all-encompassing definition. What is it about? In other words, I'm giving us permission to say we can say a lot of things about poverty of spirit. I think he's right. I mean, I wouldn't hand out the quote if I didn't think he had a good point. I guess I could be handing out and saying, tear it apart. What's wrong with this? But this is one where I'm saying, no, he's right. There.
Just as an AI's definition, because I
Go
don't
for
know
it.
myself.
Yeah.
One of the things it says is acknowledging your spiritual bankruptcy or insufficiency apart from God.
Okay.
That was a really good way to think about it.
Well, so that's ego, right? I mean, ego.
Or it's dependency, I guess.
Yeah, it plays out in dependency because you realize your inadequacy, right? Yeah, the part about bankrupt or inadequate or powerless. I mean, AA is all about, right, you're right at the beginning, we acknowledge that we were powerless over, and then you name your addiction. Why is that? Why is that step number one?
But sometimes it's the
Maybe it's because it's the first beatitude, right? Maybe it's saying to people who are trying to live into recovery, I need to start with poverty of spirit. I admit I am powerless over alcohol or powerless over controlling my temper or whatever my addiction is. I just don't want to make them substances and chemically based, right? We all have addictions.
But sometimes it's how the ruling class or the Pharisees hold it over.
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe I'm powerless over my ego. I absolutely am powerless over my ego. The ego rules me.
You're reminded how you're not.
Huh?
You're reminded how you're not there. You're not doing it.
Yeah.
It is ego, it ties into what you're saying about AA, because the ego is, I can handle alcohol.
Oh, absolutely. I just need another technique and I can handle drinking, or I can handle my ego. I can keep it in check. We need Ego's Anonymous. Right? Hi, my name's Greg, and I'm an addict. My ego is out of control, right? Okay, so it is no accident that poverty of spirit is the first of the Beatitudes. Like he's saying this is a fundamental, non-negotiable place we have to begin, which is what AA is saying. You've got to start with powerlessness, bankruptcy, the inability to manage things on your own. That's the starting place. I think he's absolutely right. And then his suggestion is all the other Beatitudes are some variation on that acknowledgement of your own helplessness, powerlessness, poverty, and how you experience it as mourning, something like that. Now, he doesn't mention the pure in heart, but then you could ask the question, which Bob Perlman, he's always asking, what does it mean to be pure in heart? Or he's always, I love it. He throws it out there as a challenge. Yeah, but you got to be pure in heart, because he knows that's a big ask, right? That's a big ask. And who can manage it? Who could say, yes, I'm pure in heart? But, he doesn't mention that. But again, to his point, isn't purity of heart fundamentally related to a poverty of spirit? Because what contaminates my heart is a lack of poverty of spirit, poorness. When I'm confident in myself, well, then my heart's not going to be pure. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Right?
But isn't this poverty of spirit kind of dynamic as you move through life, from when you're young, putting everything in the box,
Sure.
and then as the more mature you are, the more you see your insufficiencies?
Yeah. It's got to be a journey. It's got to be a process.
You don't just decide to do
No, and what might have been truly authentic purity of heart or poorness of spirit at one stage, later might not any longer qualify, right? In other words, if you say, okay, I've got some poverty of spirit here, what that might look like and generally be at age 30 is probably going to look different by age 50 because you've grown and because life, the process, right? So, yeah, it's not an all or nothing, yes or no. I wouldn't look at it that way. I would look at it as an ongoing process into which we grow, which is good news, right?
And also think that this is not something you just choose to do.
No.
No, it comes about through struggles and failures.
Yeah. I don't get up in the morning and say, I think I'll be poor in spirit. One day I made that decision. Now, that decision is forced upon me when I recognize I'm powerless, when things don't work out despite my best efforts, when it blows up in my face, right? That's when I start realizing, But of course, a lot of times what we do then is double down on, but I will manage this, right? which is why AA doesn't go out trying to recruit people. They don't. They wait till people are ready. Because there's no point in trying to talk. You don't go to the bar and try to talk to someone who's drinking. You know what? This could be a problem for you. They know better than to do that, because they know if someone had tried to talk me out of my addiction when I was fully involved in it, I wouldn't have listened at all. So they don't waste their time. They wait till somebody comes to realize, I got a problem. Then they're there.
The events have to humble you.
Right.
You have to have humility. You don't get there without humility.
Right. You got to have some humiliating circumstance. You know, the 50 spiritual letters of Francois Fenelon, the second one, he's writing to this person, he says, it's really good that you've had this great humiliation. You know, nobody wants to hear that. But his point is, but this makes you teachable. What's Francois Fenelon's point? This makes you teachable, because until I have fallen flat on my face, no one can give me any advice. I know. I got a plan. It's all working out. Until it doesn't. And then all of a sudden I become teachable. Well, I've tried all my efforts and nothing's working. Maybe I ought to listen to someone else. Right? So yeah, life brings us to this poverty of spirit, which is why, I mean, think about this, the Beatitudes. Again, it's common people sitting on a hillside listening to this rabbi, and he's telling them there's blessedness right where you are. And they don't really think that. And he's not giving them a huge challenge to surpass the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees. I think he's saying, you're already on the path to surpassing, because their righteousness builds up their own self-confidence. You're already at a place where you can sail right past that, because you're already convinced. We're just common Jews, and we can't keep the law. We don't keep the Sabbath well. We're screw-ups. You're in a good place, right? You're really in a good place. Okay, so poverty of spirit, basis for all of them. Now, the next statement. This spirit is also the mother of the threefold mystery of faith, hope, and love, charity. How can that be, Mr. Metz? Wait, what's he getting at?
This is probably not the answer. But in a way, what's happened is when I'm in poverty of spirit, I see a new reality in the world itself.
Uh-huh.
I see the poor and
Yeah.
the needy. I can love those relationships deeper
Uh-huh.
because I'm seeing beyond my. I guess what I'm saying thing is, as Jesus is walking around in a new reality, it actually kind of opens my eyes to possibly a new reality.
Okay, so yeah, picking the love thing. How does poverty of spirit make love possible? Yeah, I think you're onto it. I mean, imagine if you have no poverty of spirit. You have lots and lots of self-assurance. You're gonna have a tendency to look at others in need and go, why don't they just do better? Right? But if you deeply know your own powerlessness, your own helplessness, then you can have love that can generate a real possibility to love people in the midst of their circumstances rather than to judge them and to find them, well, they need to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. Oh, and you did, huh? Oh, you think you did. Wait till something happens that you can't pull yourself out of, and then we'll talk about bootstraps, right? And we realize, you know, when the impossible overtakes me that I can't fix, then I become less likely and more likely to love people who find themselves in similar predicaments, right? Because I identify. So I think you're right. Is it poverty of spirit connecting there to charity, to love? Alan?
I can only speak from personal experience, but being a non-Christian, growing up in the church, I got to that humility point in my late 20s. And saw it as a poverty of spirit, and the only way to climb out of that was faith, hope, and love. Faith, hope, and charity.
Yeah,
I came to faith.
right.
I came to be more charitable.
Because so we'll take the faith. What is faith? It's not a belief in a bunch of propositions. I believe that Jesus is the Son of God. I mean, that's kind of a content of it. But what, if you boil it down, what is faith?
Trust.
It's trust. It's relying. And you can't rely on anything as long as your spirit is not poor. The only people who can rely on something else are people who come to realize, I can't do it. And they're willing to rely on, as AA says again, a power greater than themselves. And at that point, nobody's even defining it. Just anything. Choose it, they say in the meeting. The doorknob, anything you can conceive of that somehow you can say, this can be greater than me. They're not worried about the content of the person's higher power at that point. They're just willing, are you willing to trust? So that's why he's saying it's the mother of faith. Nobody comes to faith unless they're poor in spirit. They could come to a set of propositions and think, oh yes, it's this way, and here's all those truth statements I believe in. That's not faith, that's joining a system of religion. But they only come to faith, deep dependence and reliance, if they're like, I'm hopeless, trying to do it myself, right? Damien, you had a thought?
Was it Paul who said that faith is the hope of things unseen?
Yeah, so you've got, there's such a close relationship between faith and hope. Sometimes I think about it, I mean, you're thinking about Hebrews, which some would say Paul wrote something. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. There's obviously such a tight relationship. Sometimes I try and distinguish it this way, to think faith is trust, hope is that trust projected into the future. Which, it's the same thing, right? I know, but they are the same thing. Faith, hope are intimately related. Faith is that I trust, and when I project that trust into what I'm facing or what is before me, that then becomes hope. A kind of confidence, because the power I'm trusting in, whatever that is, I trust that for this which has not yet come to me, right? Which has not yet arrived. So it's kind of a future-oriented faith. Jim?
All this is resonating with me, but I kind of think of poverty, spirit, maybe it's as much an orientation as it is anything.
Yeah,
It's,
yeah.
an orientation away from me. And
Yes.
we're focused, so it becomes, and then, so the mother of faith, hope, and charity, it's faith in what? Not in me, right? It's faith that God's in control. Not
Yeah.
faith that I can handle it. It's not hope that I can make things work like I want them to.
Yeah. Not my dreams working out like I plan on them. It's just,
It's hope that
Yeah.
God's got this. It's knowing that the future is set regardless of what happens.
yeah.
And the love is not a love of what do I get, what do I want, how do I achieve my goals. It's a love, it's an outward focus. How can I love the other? How can I love God?
Yeah.
So it's kind of reorients me from me and control and desire and ego and outward. And so when I'm humiliated, it's really not about me anymore. Right? And so when Francis would go and do things to humiliate himself, it was to make sure he wasn't focused on himself. He didn't care what others thought. And it was a practice to making sure he didn't care.
Yeah. Yeah, that when Wesley first came, he shared with us that book his father had given him. I'm like, you got a cool dad. That the 4 agreements, and one of the agreements you need to make with yourself is it's not about you. Whew. Boy, that hit me between the eyes. I'm like, I spent my whole life thinking it's about me. I mean, not self-centered, but in the sense of everything everyone else does is directed towards me. And the point is,
And I've got to do it right.
yeah.
I mean, and I don't have to do it right.
Yeah, and the freeing thing is, they aren't thinking of you even though they treat you this way. It's not really about you that they do this. And that's so freeing if you can realize, you know what? That's them dealing with their own stuff. It just happens to be you're the subject of it at this moment. It's not really about you. Because my personality type is to take everything personally, right? Take it all personally. And that comes from certain history, and I know why. It's there. But I got to stop doing that. I got to stop thinking it's all really directed at me, right? So yeah, faith, hope, and love. In that sense, you think about it, they're all outside oneself. They're an outside perspective, a trust, a reliance, not on yourself, but on the other. Hope, the trust that the other holds promise for you. Because biblical faith is not a wishful, I hope it works out. It's an absolute certainty because it's rooted in love. You know you're loved, and so your hope is in what love will always be, which it'll always be there and it'll always have you. Right? So you're exactly right. Poverty of spirit has to be the mother of faith, hope, and love. Because until I have lost any confidence in myself, how can I trust another or hope that another is holding the future or love well in the love of God, which is selfless, right? So once again, Mr. Metz, you seem to have struck a chord, right? Seem to be on track. Okay, but let's keep going. Then he makes his statement is, it is the doorway through which we must pass to become authentic human beings. Only through poverty of spirit do we draw near to God. Now, for those of us who love absolute statements, this always makes us cringe, right? Oh, you sure it's the only way? You sure it's must? Maybe it's just one in an array of possibilities. But he's bold. He's going all in. He's saying, this is what you must do. There's no alternative, and this is the only way. Is he right? He's not inspired. He doesn't have to be right. We can question this. Right? So, what about these two statements? The first is how to become an authentic human being. And the second is drawing near to God.
You know, it reminds me of the true self concept,
Right.
being authentic, and that's what he's kind of pointing to.
Yeah, so he echoes someone like Thomas Merton and Richard Rohr and others who talk about the true self, which of course is something Buddhism talks about. So that what he uses for authentic self, we could say true self. So
Would that be Jesus? Would that be Jesus, the authentic?
Yes. Yeah.
And he's the ultimate example of an authentic human?
He is in some ways, he is the first human being ever to exist. If we think of human being as a living, breathing Homo sapien, then we'll say, well, there's been millions of human beings. No, but none of them had become truly human. Because here's the theological link in the gospel is the human when it's perfectly united with the divine. We sometimes think that the divine and the human are incompatible, but in Christ we see the human and the divine linked inseparably, indistinguishable. And that's what makes Jesus Adam, truly Adam. The true Adam is Christ, the first human being who was truly human. And so it's like, in all my waywardness and stupidity and self-centeredness, I'm not truly human. I have not become who God sees me as and is bringing me to be. I become that more and more as the life of Christ has lived in me. I'm becoming human, right? Well, I'm a Homo sapien, right? Okay, in the biological sense, anthropologically, I'm human, but I'm not a human spiritually until I become truly united with God, because that's what humans are supposed to be, united with God, right? So we're all on a journey to becoming human.
Do we ever reach that?
I don't think in this life. although sainthood is, attributed to certain people who got very, very close, right? And you recognize someone who's like, that's such a gracious, kind, generous, wise, person. You're saying they're really becoming human, aren't they, right? If we have that idea of human is to be like Christ, and Christ is ever human, right? He's eternally the human being. The union of the divine and what we call humanity. And that's what we're being caught up into. But no, I'm definitely not truly human in that sense, and I'm still full of errors, and don't ask Marcia, she knows a lot.
She would never say.
And anyone around me
Because
can
she's
see
so
can see my imperfections, right?
As close as they come, right?
But that's what, see, I like what he's saying because his theology is rich only through poverty of, right? Well, that's the same. It is the doorway through which we must pass to become authentic human beings. So his idea is when a baby's born, it's not really human. And as we grow up and we're teenagers, we're not really human.
We get even further
And
away.
if we're self-centered, egotistical people, we're not really human yet, right? And only the person who reaches, because of circumstances, because life is difficult and full of suffering, and we know that, who reaches a place of poverty of spirit, that person is really starting to become human. And see, this is so opposite to our world because we admire the powerful, the egotistical, the people who dominate. That's what our world celebrates. If we're Christians and understand the message, we are absolutely opposite of that. The first to last and last is first. The people that we see as truly human are the unnoticed, the poor in spirit, the poor among us. That they're more human than some of these super powerful people who act out of their own confidence and run things. They're not nearly as human as some little old lady or little old man just doing good in their little spot of the world. That individuals become more human. And they don't think of themselves as great and mighty. They would never think of themselves as that. Is that resonating?
Which is his next line, right? It's only through poverty do we draw near to God.
Right.
And does God draw near to God?
And you got to think about the statement that James says, God resists the proud but gives grace to the humble. That's a principle. That's just a true kind of like universal principle. You want to know something? Who does God draw near to? The humble. Well, is he rejecting the proud? No. He's waiting for the proud to come on his terms. Right? The only way to come to God is on God's terms. I spent a lot of time in my life trying to get God to come to me on my terms.
But is there really a scenario of like I want to know God and be near Him, but I don't really need Him?
I mean,
Because if you understand God, begin to understand God, then you see the need.
Yes, right,
You know, so
right.
there's-
A person could sincerely be exactly what you described. I want to be near to God, but I don't want to need. But like you're saying, that's just a sign they really don't understand the divine beauty and love and goodness of God, or they would say, I can't survive without this.
Or your own poverty. you know.
Right, right. So it could be a very sincerely held position. You could know someone who that's what they're articulating, and it's not a lack of sincerity or necessarily boastfulness, or they don't see themselves as having too much confidence in themselves. They just haven't gotten to that place where they're desperate. Yeah. And there's nothing we can do to make that happen. Just wait patiently, kind of like God does, until he resists the proud, but he gives grace to the humble. He's trying to bring us to that place where we can meet him. Right? But you got to think, God is also humble. Don't think of God as proud. Look at all the abuse heaped upon God, and what does he do about it? Everyone who maligns God, does he strike them down? No, he doesn't. He lets it go on and on and on. Right? God is humble, so he's not asking me to be humble unlike him. God is humble, asking me to be like him. the one who born as a baby in a manger, in a barn, without, this is the humility of God. He's not egotistical. I used to think of God as an egotistical maniac who demanded my praise all the time because he had an insatiable desire for attention. I had misunderstood what it was about, right? Okay, Marcia.
The statement only through it does God draw near to us. I don't know. To me, God draws near to children and babies and all, and they're not having poverty of spirit. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, I get that only,
But maybe they are.
you know.
Well, it's lack of ego, eh?
Yeah, see, the thing is, I think that babies and children are more authentic. I think that's the beauty. That's why Jesus has become as little children. If we could just be that authentic, I mean, we're not, at that age, nobody's playing a game. They haven't created a false self that they're trying to convince you of. They're just who they are. And when they throw a tantrum, they throw a tantrum. And when they're happy, they're happy. You know, they're in the moment, and they're delightful, and well, sometimes they're naughty. But they're not yet being deceitful, deeply deceitful about it, right? So maybe God is drawing near to them, and they are near to God because there's not a lot of falseness about it. But as they get older, they'll learn. They'll learn to have guile, the old word, to be deceitful, to try and convince others of things. So I just would suggest maybe there is, but you've also got a great point, Marcia, is we don't want to make it seem like God is not drawing near to us. I think the nearness he's talking about there is kind of you'll come into a mutuality of love and fellowship. I would also say God is always drawing near to me even when I'm not drawing near. In other words, it doesn't become this harmonious
They
meeting.
don't have poverty of spirit.
Right.
They don't near to you.
Yes. Because there is the description of God as the hound of heaven. He's always on your trail. You can't shake that bloodhound. He's always following your scent. He's after you in the best possible way. He won't let you go. So in that sense, God is always trying to draw near to me, but it's not returned. I haven't learned through poverty of spirit to draw near to the God who's drawing near to me. And so therefore it doesn't happen because I'm not willing.
It's like a lesser level of nearness.
Right.
Like you can't have the true nearness of God. Like there's A+ level, and you might get to
Yeah.
the C or B- level, but you're not all the way until you have the poverty of spirit.
So there's the famous statement, God is nearer to us than we are to ourselves. Illustrated by the fact that he knows the number of hairs in your head, which means he's nearer to you than you are to you,
Yeah.
which is the truth, whether or not I'm aligned to that truth or aware of that truth. Where's God? Because that's what we think is he's not showing up on my terms, right? So I have trouble thinking there even is a God. Well, I'm sympathetic with that thought process, but what Jesus asserts is he's nearer to you than you are to yourself. He knows the number of hairs in your head, which is just a shorthand way of saying he's so close to you, you don't even know yourself as well as he does. So that's closeness. But it's because it's not reciprocated subjectively, in my own experience, it seems like we're as far apart as can be. And I perceive no closeness, even though he's close to me. Some of you, I've used it before, St. Augustine's prayer in his Confessions, a prayer about after a long search for God. I forget what the title we give to it, but it's really beautiful. He says, you were within me, but I was outside of myself. And out there I looked for you everywhere. And he recounts his spiritual journey. He says, I was looking for you out there, but you were always in here. But I wasn't in here. I was outside of myself, and so I did not know the God who was within me, who was closer to me than I am to myself. So that's kind of the spiritual journey. You realize, he's not on the mountaintop. He's not over there. He's not over there. He was here all along. If I had learned to look inward, I would have found God is present. That's the essence of his prayer.
For lo, I'm with you always.
Yeah, see, and that's not just to the believers. I think that, well, it's spoken to the disciples, but is that not true to the whole world? If in him we live and move and have our being, exactly who's far from God? When Paul says that to Greek philosophers, in him we live and move and have our being. And they're not believers in Jesus, but he's saying, look, we're all just living in God here. So he's close to these people, these philosophers who have an altar to an unknown God. He's as close to them as possibly can be. They are completely oblivious to his presence. So there's not an actual separation. There's only a perceptual separation. They don't know that he's their God. Right? Okay.
So there was
Yeah.
I kind of view this in a very simple way, like Caroline hugging Matt right now as a 17-year-old boy. She's very close to him, very near to him. He can't feel that right now. That is.
We've all been there with him.
He's not ready to embrace back.
Yeah, yeah.
She's not far from him. Sometimes God's embracing me, and I'm just like, I'm not ready for that. You know,
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
she's not gonna leave. She's
Oh, of
gonna
course
stop
not.
Trying,
she's
just
still
like
gonna
God
run
does.
her fingers through his hair.
Don't touch me. Yeah. Oh, we have all been there. You know, Jimmy Ann had a great statement about teenagers. She said she and her daughter fought so much when her daughter was a senior in high school. She said she had to do that so she could leave.
Mhm.
Like she had to mentally separate or she wouldn't be able to leave home. It's kind of like she had to up herself to, I gotta leave. And Jimmy Ann knew that she really didn't want to leave, but she had to do that so she could go off, which is what you want her to do, which you want your kids to launch out. And yeah, but it's a difficult time. Yeah, I think that's a beautiful.
I didn't know that's what my mother was doing.
Well, Jimmy Ann was doing it. I don't know about everybody else.
Shows the difference in mothers.
Yeah, it depends on the parents.
I do mine want to be gone.
When Brent was 28 or 29, 28, he left. We got him into an apartment, and you know, the last few things he had to take over to the apartment. It was his last trip home to get everything. And I was hugging him and, you know, saying, we'll be over, I'll be over, blah, blah. He goes, aren't you gonna cry? And I said, why would I cry? He said, well, when kids go off to college, moms cry. And I said, that's because they're 18 and they could be going hours away. So you're a mile and a half from us and you're 28. I'm happy you're leaving. It is long overdue.
You have three kids, it's only the first one.
Yeah. You don't cry after the first one.
All right, so we've covered most of it, just the last, the last sentence, and then we'll stop at 12 o'clock. Poverty of spirit is the meeting point of heaven and earth. Or you could say, yeah, I mean, he's talking metaphorically, yes, it's that connection point. The mysterious place where God and humanity encounter each other. God is always encountering us, we're not encountering God. Now it becomes mutual, right? I like calling God the ground of our being. I discover the ground of my being. What has always grounded me, even when I didn't realize this is what was grounding me. This is the source of my existence. God and humanity encounter each other, the point where infinite mystery, that's God, meets concrete existence, my little finiteness. So I'll just share this one other thing in a summary of, so he writes a whole book on this. He said, what does he do in the whole book? Here's what he says. Authentic encounter with God occurs not in escape from human limitations, finitude, weakness, but precisely in embracing the poverty, the vulnerability, the incompleteness of human existence. I don't have to rise out of my weakness to encounter God. I have to embrace my weakness, and there God encounters me, and I encounter God. See, and that's the whole problem with kind of religious legalism. You gotta rise up in more righteousness in order to encounter God. And it's just the opposite. No, you have to admit, I'm a totally unrighteous person. You have to be like Isaiah. Woe is me. I'm an unclean person who lives among a people who are unclean. I'm a man of unclean lips. Guess what? That's when he has this close encounter with God. But too often, religion presents itself as, here's the spiritual ladder you must climb and get better on, because only the people further up on that have real encounters with God. No, that's not how God comes to us.
Greg, could you also rephrase poverty of spirit as poverty of ego?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, so he's basically saying you have to embrace your human weakness, and then God will come to you, and you will be willing to come to God. In the midst of your
But
weakness.
basically, he was already there. Come to you. He doesn't. He's not.
Well, yeah.
You're just getting the.
I'm talking more
You're just
perceptual.
recognizing.
Yeah, your blindness disappears. You see, you go from darkness to light. When you're in the light, it seems like God has just appeared for the first time, but actually the darkness is gone, and I can see God was here all along. Yeah, that's exactly what's happening. Yeah, but it's only in embracing our weakness, not somehow fighting against it, trying to be perfect, because God loves the perfect. No. He loves those who are open to his love, and what makes us open to his love is embracing our imperfection. All right, we'll stop there, 12:04. Have a blessed week.
Bob, very impressed with